Daniel chapter number 3. Daniel chapter number 3. And I'm not going to shortchange you on prophecy tonight, but I will say this. This is not going to be a prophetic sermon in the sense I'm going to touch on some things here just to give us the background for chapter number 3. But I'm not going to dive deep into prophecy. We can, but Sunday night's probably not when I would do it. That would be more of a Wednesday night sermon. But I do want to give just enough to put us where we are in chapter 3. Now, we'll go back in Daniel chapter number 2, and I want us to look. Before we do that, let's read verse 1 of chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. So the plain of Dura means walked on. That basically, it was just flat where everybody could see. He wanted everybody to see it that could see it. But nobody's really ever talked about that I'm aware of. I've never heard a preacher really say why he did this. Besides conceit and selfishness, we could all say that. Pretty much want to make a statue to yourself. But really, what was fueling this golden statue? And it's interesting if you'll notice the height of it. Look at the height of it. 80 cubits. A score is 20. So that's 60 cubits. And the breadth thereof 6. 66. 6 is a number of man. 7, of course, perfection. But one commentator, I want you to listen to this. Among the enemies of God, not just Nebuchadnezzar, we're talking about collectively, they were always marked by the number 6. Goliath, how tall was he? 6 cubits. Having 6 pieces of armor and a spear's head weighing 600 shekels. What's that? Yes, you can figure that one out. Nebuchadnezzar, whose image, 60 cubits high, 6 cubits wide. The Antichrist, Revelation 13:18, you know that. 666. And even Solomon, at the height of his earthly glory, received 666 talents of gold each year and sat on a throne of only 6 steps. Even in his advanced human wisdom, power, and influence, he drifted from God and shows characteristics of the Antichrist at the end there. But throughout history, the best man could ever produce in his effort is that 666. Which falls short of the triune completeness, 777. Perfectness. Which the Trinity pictures, and we find perfection in the Lord Jesus Christ. And that's the only place you're going to find perfection. If you want your husband to be there, it's not going to happen. If you want your wife to be there, it's not going to happen. And y'all, sometime I'm going to show you a video just to take a little laugh break here for a minute. Y'all remember me telling you about this morning, the phone calls? I'm going to play video. There's a video about that. This man called the husband and asked him, told him that Tom was in a wreck and wanted to pray for Tom. And it shows and then the wife got a million questions about what happened to Tom. I just got a text. Tom was in a wreck. He needs prayer. And she'll ask him another. I got a text. Tom was in a wreck. What hospital did he go to? I got a text. Tom was in a wreck. And I'm going to play it for you sometime. It's pretty funny. But here in chapter 3, verse 1, we see the likeness of really humanity and Nebuchadnezzar putting that up. But the head we see in chapter 2, turn back over there, the head in chapter 2, verse 32, the image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass. And I'm just going to run through these real quick, not to avoid them, just to go over them and then tell you why I believe it's important to verse number 1. So the head is fine gold. That was Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. That represented Babylon. And then we see the breast and the arms was silver, with the bear and the ram representing the Medes and the Persians, Media Persia. And then the bronze, the belly, and the thigh in verse 32 and verse 39. The leopard there and the goat, that's Greece under Alexander the Great. And then the iron was Rome. And then the discussion comes into play with the feet and the toes. And all the way up to verse 40, I believe, has already happened. And then you come to verse 40, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, breaketh in pieces, subdueth all things. Rome was destroyed from the inside out. And as iron that breaketh all these shall I break in pieces and bruise. Verse 41, whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of the potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there should be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with clay. And it talks again about the mixture. And many conservative commentators believe that's the revived Roman Empire. But if you'll notice that it was broken in verse number 34, I want you to notice this part. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet. There's the feet that were of iron and clay, and break them in pieces. My theory is, and it's just really a theory, this part of it is Nebuchadnezzar, trying to change the course of history, wanted to build a solid gold statue. Seeing in the prophecy that it would be destroyed down here, the part that wasn't gold. So he's trying to avoid the destruction, and build a solid brass to take away the part that was not solid, and build a gold statue. Now that's my take on that part of it. The other part is well documented. But he had a desire to really, he wanted to run the world. It wasn't anything about, he just didn't want to see it destroyed. It wasn't that he was trying to look out for people and rewrite history. He was trying to look out for number one. So it had nothing to do with changing history for the people's sake. It was just changing history for his sake. And to establish his authority, his power. And so he built this statue. And in verse number 2, then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together under the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up." Now, you know what's interesting, and I want to go back to the stone in just a minute, but what's interesting here, Nebuchadnezzar was wise to the use of instrumental music, and the fact that it could stir with people's emotions, make it easy for him to manipulate them and to win their submission and obedience. Throughout history, music and songs have been played and have played an important part in strengthening nationalism, motivating conquest, inspiring people to act. Music has the power to grip emotions, to grip thoughts, and to transform between free agents to mere puppets. One poet said this: music has charms to soothe the savage beast, but music also has power to release the savage in the beast. And certainly it does. Music can be a wonderful tool and treasure from the Lord, or a destructive weapon from Satan. It can be. And we have seen this, I think, in the last 30 years. at least since 1990, for sure. And I remember the arguments about all kinds of music, when I was going to school. They'd argue about Steve Green and Sandy Patty and Petra and DC Talk, I think maybe it just had come out. And all that. And then there was some on the dorm floor that were still listening to AC/DC. They didn't argue about Petra. They just... They wasn't going to argue about no kind of Christian music. They was at a Christian school, but they just, hey, they was listening to not DC Talk. They was listening to that Run DMC and AC/DC. They didn't care about the rest of it. They wasn't even going to try to cross over. And it's usually what happens. You just try to get as close as you can. That's right. And one day you're going to fall over. Amen. You can't twinkle these toes stretched out too long without getting off balance. Amen. And be careful. Yes. Be careful with music. And it usually starts there, but it don't end there. Amen. I've never seen somebody slide in philosophical direction spiritually that stayed in one spot. They start somewhere, but they end up somewhere else. Brother Steve's seen it. I've seen it. Brother Clint's seen it. Brother Jerry's seen it. We've all seen it. And it starts in, what you listen to. Well, in my car, it got quiet right there just all of a sudden. It starts what we listen to at home. Well, what I listen to in my car is my own business. Oh, absolutely. But when you start separating sacred from secular, you're in a slippery slope to nowhere. Amen. Amen. If rank strangers good enough for me in the car all the time, it's good enough in church. But it ain't. It ain't okay. If some beer drinking song and country song is okay in the car, it won't be long. It'll be in the church. Amen. Not right here, as long as I'm breathing. But I may get COVID. If I get COVID and die, I'm going to be okay. He just talked about that the other night. It's okay. If I get it and go, we got good insurance. Mama's going to be fine. But don't do that. I'll come back on that one. You got to guard it. You got to guard it. Because once you start leaning, it never stops. I understand music changes. Styles of music change. I get that. If Dr. Smith from the early 1900s or P.P. Bliss, if he heard when they heard him, I think he was early 1900s, Brother Mahaffey. I can't get the years right. When he was doing music, they thought he was contemporary. So music does change. Music changes. But you got to make sure if you're going to church just for the music, you're probably not going for the right reason. If you just tolerate the preaching to listen to the music, it's probably the wrong place. Or it may not be the wrong place. It may be a change of heart needs to happen. But I know people that go just the music is the hook. Everything else is they just endure. The music sounds as close to what they listen to all the time, and so they just endure the message. And we got such ear ticklers now, they ain't got to endure much. They ain't got to endure a whole lot. And then the music's the hook. I mean, can you imagine here? Think about it now. They wasn't playing no music before. And even you think, oh man, that's crazy. You know what Hitler, the person in Hitler's regime that was over the kids, it was over the teens, he turned it into, if you worship Hitler, it's like you're worshiping God. If you think it can't turn and music can't be used, oh yes. I've seen it and you have too. Y'all have seen those like a commercial or something. I ain't never been to one, I promise. But them headbangers things, you can't tell me with a straight face that you can understand anything that they say. All you can see, and their heads everywhere. Right? That's all. You can't hear nothing. You can't even hear yourself think, as my mama would say. You can't. And just hit. And so what is that? Music is, and I want to help y'all here. Young people, I want to help you. Music, you listen to me. You can say it's old-fashioned. You can say what you want to. Music, I talked to, I'm trying to think of the best word. I discussed with a college president about this very thing when I was in college. Music is not amoral. You can, I'll argue with you till the cows come home and the chickens crow in the morning about this. Music is not amoral. What does that mean? It means music has a message. I'm not talking about words. No words. Music, in its instrumental music, is not amoral. Because if it were, won't they play Amazing Grace at the Wake Forest ball game? It's not amoral. Music has meaning. Music. I'm not talking about words. Music. If you don't believe it, it just you go somewhere and over, I'm sure over at the trampoline places, they're not playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. They're not playing climb up Sunshine Mountain, heavenly breezes blow. They're not doing that. I mean, they're playing jumping around music. That's what they're doing. Music has message. And where we get in trouble, we think, if the words are good, it doesn't really matter about the music. It does matter about the music. If you're listening to immoral music, even if the words are moral, they don't go together. They don't go together. Amen. If you knew I was an embezzler, you wouldn't say, he talks so nice. Right. Who cares how you talk? You're taking money. That's right. You're embezzler. So just because you're saying the right things, how many salesmen we got in that building? Just see where my target audience is. Okay, John, just you, salesman, John. Only John and James. I think they can handle this. And politicians really bad. But they're going to tell you pretty much what you can't trust most salesmen. Now these two you can, hopefully. No, you can't, or they wouldn't be, James wouldn't be running that camera back there. But you can, I go and I talked to a salesman this week. And I didn't listen to half of what he told me. I just said, print it out for me. I want to hear what he's got to say. I'm sorry. I'm just the way it is. I'm not going to listen much to that. Just print it. Print it. And he wasn't a car salesman. It was some kind of other salesman. It wasn't for me. It was for somebody else. And I went to talk to him, and I thought, just like people say when they voted for President Trump, what they say, I'm not voting for a pastor, I'm voting for a president. You remember that? You don't remember that? Well, when you're talking to salesmen and you need what they got, I'm not talking to them because I need a pastor. We're talking because we need carpet. Not really. And so you understand that people that talk like that sometimes you don't believe them. And so no matter what they tell you, the industry sometimes, whatever there is corrupt. Sometimes it's corrupt from the bottom up or top down. And so because of that corruption, you automatically think, man, it doesn't matter what they say. I know what they're pushing. Same way with music. You can say the nicest words you want to say, but if it's got hellish music to it, it's not right. Amen. No matter what kind of words you put to it. It's not right. So we've got on that one enough, but he uses it here, and they're like, they're just bowing down. The title of the message tonight, The Heat Is On. And so here they start playing, and he tells them to hear the king's up, the music. When you hear it, fall down, worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Verse 6, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast under the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews, and they spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And we got a problem. Verse 12, there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up. I hope y'all read along with me. This is we ought to all know this story. And don't think you know it too well to read it again. Let's read it again. And verse 15, now if you be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all the kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image. They put a lot of stock in the music. If they hadn't, they wouldn't have mentioned it 14 times. Every time he's mentioning the music. Why? To get their mind to the music. They're saying it over and over to get their mind on the music. And all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I've made well. But if you worship not, you should be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar. Why I like that? Because they didn't even take any time. They didn't say, oh, give us a minute. Oh, you're asking a hard thing. Hold on, king. Let me check my resources. Let me check my connections. No, they didn't even think twice. They didn't think twice about it. They answered right away. We're not careful, verse 16, to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. And then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake, commanded they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated. Now, can you imagine? Think with me, all the thousands of people that are bowing. All the thousands of people that are bowing and just hush and bow. Just looking back at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, hush and bow. Just come on. You may be bowing in your head, but you don't have to bow in your heart. You just bow in your head. Just make out like you're not. Remain standing in your heart. That sounds spiritual, but it's carnal. It's wicked. It's cowardly. You may be standing, you may be bowing in your knees, but you be still standing inside your heart. That sounds lovely. It ain't worth a hill of beans when the heat's on. When the heat's on, what are you going to do? Really, at work. When they want you, to miss a month's worth of church. What are we going to do when they say you can't meet like this anymore? It's okay. What are we going to do? What are you going to do when all the people above you say this is how they do it, just change the numbers a little bit and you'll be fine? Just massage them numbers a little bit, get it where you want it, you'll be all right. The IRS got bigger fish to fry than you. Just go ahead and change it a little bit. It won't matter. Oh, it will matter. It will matter. Oh, just go ahead and text him back. It's okay. He's not your husband, but you can text him back. I'm not talking about business stuff. You can call, just go ahead and look them up. Look up the high school reunion Facebook page and see who your old boyfriend was. It's okay. What are you going to do when the heat's on to do wrong? When everybody else is sipping the wine, what are you going to do? Everybody else is sipping, drinking. What are you going to do? Well, I can stop. I've never seen an alcoholic who stopped. That's right. That's a profound statement right there. Now, they stopped when they met Jesus. I've never met one that stopped before obviously they had to keep on to be an alcoholic. Do you understand the logic there? They had to keep on. What are we going to do when you're pressured to be immoral? Young men, young ladies, the heat's on you. There's more filth on social media. There's more filth. What are you going to do? Just because he says he loves you doesn't give him a right to put his hands on you. And even when he puts an engagement ring on your hand, don't mean give him the right to do it. You're not going to be bought by an engagement ring no more than anything else. Get your daddy to buy you one. He'll buy you one. Amen. If he won't, we'll get enough money. We'll get you one. That don't mean anything. What are you going to do when the heat's on? The heat was on. Everything they were against, they were asked to do it or be, not just you going to be in time out. They're going in the fire. It's not time out. This is not some little something. And I want to say to us tonight, the heat is on the church. The heat is on the Christians. The heat is on us. And I understand, and we can be relative and we can say, Pastor, you're just a mite legalistic for me. We can talk like that all we want to till the heat's on. He didn't say nothing. I mean, he didn't even flinch here. You don't go tiptoeing around liberal stuff and come up with a clear declaration that we're not going in. Amen. People that do this every time something comes on and just don't know which way to go because they're unstable as water, they don't stand like this. Amen. People that are halfway in and halfway out, they don't do this. You don't get here. You don't get to where Daniel, you are not going to stand in the face of King Nebuchadnezzar if you're not standing in the face of your buddy now. The heat's on. And to us, listen, social media, the heat's on to do right. Young people, it ain't just young people. There's more money poured into filth on the internet than all the combined sports together. Amen. I can give you the stats on that too. More money in filth on the internet than all the sports combined. Why? Because we live in an immorally charged world. Amen. It's crazy. The heat's on to do right. The heat's on to stand. The heat's on to be faithful to your spouse. The heat's on to stick it out, even when it ain't the best it's ever been, but hey, we're going to hang in there. The heat's on. Nebuchadnezzar says bow. The world says bow. What are we going to do? What are we going to do when they come knocking on our door saying they got a candidate for hire for our church and they're homosexual. Or at least say you either got to hire them or shut it down. What are we going to do? Pastor, you talking crazy talk. No, it's coming. Daniel made up his mind long before he ever got to Babylon. And what these messages are meant to do, certain truths for uncertain times, is to get us ready when it comes to us. And if you give an inch here and there, that's not a big deal. Come on. Yeah, it is now. It is now. It is a big deal. What are we going to do? He said, we're not bowing. If God gets us out, fine. If he don't, fine. The thrust of the message tonight is this. Do you know that God can protect you without performing an extrication from the circumstances? Do you know that God can protect you, in other words, in human terms, without getting you out of it? God can protect you without performing an extrication, without getting you out of it. And here we see he was in the same boat. And you may be in stuff right now, and we're going to be in situations, but God is able to be right with you no matter what's happening on the out. Matter of fact, think about this. God could have stopped it immediately from ever going in. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he keep him from it? You know, it's not God's will to keep us from some things. Sometimes it's God's will for us to go through them and him to go with it, go with us through it. To prove his power, to prove his presence. And so you may be going through something tonight thinking, I just wish God would take me out of here. And there have been times in my life, in certain situations, I think, God, why can't you just fix this? God, I just want you to fix it. I'm not asking for anything special. I just want you to fix it. Because, you know, in the life of a pastor, sometimes weddings and funerals, that's really, in hospital visits, is all people kind of think you do. And so if, you know, something about weddings, pretty much, hopefully they're final. Like, once the wedding's over, it's final. And not in a crude way, but at a funeral. That person is in eternity now. It's final. But there's some stuff that happens in our lives that just keeps going on. It's not final. And Brother Greg, there's been times in my own life when I've thought, Lord, can you just fix this real quick? Like, I'm ready for this to be over. I don't like going to bed like this. Gnawed on the insides. Mind racing. Just concerned. Not being able to sleep. And I want to do it. And I've asked the Lord, and sometimes, I just want him to, pretty much however you want to stop it, just stop it. Like, stop this right now, please. Will y'all help me just a minute? Has anybody ever been there and there like that? Okay, thank you. I feel better. If it was something that was over, like football games are over. Events are over. Sometimes you get in something, it won't stop. The hurt don't stop. Pain don't stop. The problems don't stop. The people don't stop. They just don't stop. And you say, Lord, I just want to get out of here. It may be a memory. I want to get out of here. I don't want to keep dealing with this. And the easiest thing, and I'm a fixer. I think it's understood most men are fixers. And we don't like to tell details. We like to fix stuff, right? And I want to fix it. And Brother Joel, I want it to be over. Like, if I can't fix it, it's taxing on me continually. I want to fix it. But church, I want to tell you, sometimes God puts us in the midst of a furnace for the realization that His presence is with us. And when the heat is on, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're going through, God is going to be with you. And they said, hey, whatever you want to do, we're not bowing. So if you throw us in there, He's going to take care of us. Whatever you need to do, you do it. We're not bowing. And so as we're in the midst of stuff right now, you may be in the midst of a personal battle right now. And like I said, the circle just keeps turning. The merry-go-round will not stop. You know, you can get hurt on moving merry-go-rounds. If you try to get off before they're done, I've got thrown for a loop on one before. Sometimes it won't stop, and I want it just to stop. And you think, man, just God, please stop it. I prayed that before. I prayed, God, please stop this. And you know what? Sometimes He hadn't. But I tell you what has happened. He got out in there with me. He got down in there, in it. He got in it. I'm praying to Him up here, and He says, well, let me just come down there. And I'm going to be in it with you. So what I'm telling you tonight, you may not get your prayer answered about getting you out, but He will get in. When the heat's on, He will get in. And we can sense the sweet aroma and presence of the Holy Spirit of God and the Lord Jesus. And I want to read this because it's just good. Then in verse number 20, 21, then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen. Praise God, we don't have to wear that. That don't even sound good for a man right there. Some of you ladies don't like that word. Their hosen and their hats and their other garments, and were cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And therefore, because the king's, verse 22, commandment was urgent, the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, killed them dead as a hammer. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound in the midst of the fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said to his counselors, did not we cast three men bound in the midst of the fire? And they answered and said unto the king, oh, true, O king. And he answered and said, lo, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. You may not be pulled out of it, but He will be put into it. When the heat's on, you may not be pulled out of it, but He will be put into it. I want to read you a couple things tonight in closing. The story is told of John Huss, and he promoted Jon White, the great Bible translator. He promoted his teachings that included the premise that people ought to be permitted to read the Bible in their own language. And basically that they should oppose any tyranny of the established church that threatened the penalty of execution for anyone possessing a non-Latin Bible. And so it's not surprising that Huss was condemned to death because of this. And don't let anybody tell you how violent Baptist people were. Always bring up Bloody Mary to them. Ask them how Bloody Mary got her name. It's kind of turned that one on. I did that to one guy one day. He's talking about Baptists and Protestant and all that. And I said, what about Bloody Mary? How'd she get her name? And he stopped. So Huss was condemned to burn at the stake. And on the night before he was condemned to burn, the night before his execution, while he was in the cell there, he tested himself, and he got a match and put it on his hand. And he jerked back. He jerked his hand back because he wanted to test out the pain. He's quoted as saying this: "If I can't withstand the fire of a candle, how the stake?" This is the night before, so he's afraid, obviously, to burn. The next day, Huss not only endured the blazing flames, but when he was dying, he sang, "Christ, thou Son of the living God, have mercy upon me." God's grace was sufficient. He went through the flames in a manner that glorified his Father. Huss's last words was reported to have been this: "In 100 years, God will raise up a man whose cause for reform cannot be suppressed." That's what he said. He was burned at the stake in 1415. A little over a century later, in 1517, Martin Luther posted the 95 Theses on the door at Wittenberg, setting in motion the Protestant Reformation. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Now, I'm not proposing that we're all going to be martyrs tonight, but I am saying this: no matter what you're going through, God will get in there with you. There are other names: Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Ridley, Thomas Cranmer. And Ridley had been raised Catholic, but he was converted. And Latimer became a great preacher. Ridley helped author books. And they were arrested during the Protestant persecution by Queen Mary, Bloody Mary, 1553 through 55. Both these men were arrested and condemned to be burned at the stake. As the flames were being lit, Hugh Latimer cried out. He said this to his fellow martyr. Here's what he said to Nicholas Ridley. He said, "Be of good cheer, Master Ridley, and play the man." Be of good cheer, Master Ridley, and play the man. "We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as shall never be put out." He said, play the man. You know what I say to us? When the heat's on, play the man. It's time God's people understood there's more to this than just cotton candy feelings. There's something to being a Christian. There's no easy way to follow Jesus Christ. There's no crossless way to follow Jesus Christ. And may God help us to be willing to stand. And if we won't stand now with our friends, our family, I wonder what's going to happen when one day we have to stand against local. And I'm for going with the government as long as we can. I am. It's Bible. Unless they go against the Bible. And I'm for going as much as we can. But when we have to go against it, who's not going to be here? See, when everybody gets nervous when you start talking like this, but I'm just getting us ready. It is coming. It may not be this year. It may not be next year. It's coming. So I'm going to ask you, where are you going to be? Where are we going to be? Where am I going to be? We need each other. And we need to understand, no matter if we go through the fire, personally, nationally, collectively, he said, hey, old Nebuchadnezzar, hold on a minute. There's 4 in there. Of course there is. Wherever you go, there's 2 as well. Whether you got anybody with you or not, there's 2 with you. I mean, Pastor, I don't know if I can take another day, take another step. Yeah, you can.
Yes, sir.
He's with you. His presence is real. And when you're in the fire, he'll be in the fire with you. Not burning. Not burning. They weren't burning. They weren't burning. They didn't burn.
That's right.
They didn't even have the smell of smoke. They walked out. Better shape than anybody around. But he'll be there with you. When the heat's on, are you going to quit? I'm not talking about national persecution. I'm just talking about when they make fun of you at work, or when things are not going your way, when your prayers are not answered, are you going to quit?
Come on.
When things are not going well financially, are you going to quit? You're going to quit giving because everything didn't work out this year? You're going to quit going to church because it's just easier not to go?
Amen.
What are we going to do when the heat's on? One thing we need to be reminded of, wherever you are. Now in the fire, here's the, and I'm done. Here's the note. It's 7:10. My goodness. Here's the interesting thing. Do you know where he was right now? He wasn't up top. He was in the fire. Which tells me, when you're doing good, if you're out of the will of God, what are you giving up? The presence of God. Now, he said, I'll never leave you. I'm not saying he's leaving you. But you can leave him.
Amen.
But in the fire, guess what? He jumped down in there with him.
Yes, sir.
You know what he'll do with you in the fire? He'll jump in there with you. If you don't want to do right, you're forsaking, you're giving up the presence of God in your life. You're saying, I don't need you. When we fail to stand, we fail to have the protection of God on our life. In the sense, I'm not walking with him right now. But they got in the fire doing right. And man, just as quick as they got in there. I don't think there was any lapse between the time they got thrown in and the time he was in there. There wasn't any lapse. He was in there with him. Amen. And you may be here, you may be a widow here, a widower here. You may not have your spouse anymore, but I want you to know God's right there with you.
Yes. Amen.
He's right. Every lonely night, he's right there to help you.
Glory to God.
Every night when the pain's almost unbearable, he's right there with you. He'll be there to help. Some of you watching tonight on live stream. He'll be there with you. Some of you are here. He'll be there with you. Some of you have had great loss in your life. He'll be there with you. He was and he will be. Some of you have had things happen. You don't know why in the world it happened. He'll be there with you. He doesn't, just because he didn't take it away, that doesn't mean he doesn't love you and he's not with you. Sometimes we get this idea, and I prayed it. I prayed, God, please take this away. God, please stop this. Take it away. If I'm not careful, Brother Marty, when he didn't do it, I almost thought, hey, you don't hear my prayer anyway. Pastor, you've never done that. I'm sorry to tell you, I have. I have. When he didn't stop it, didn't take it, then I just wondered, did you even hear that? Did you hear that? Of course he did. You know what he did, though? He didn't get me out of it. On the way, he jumped in there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, I know he's with us all the time. I'm talking about in a tangible way. Here I come. I'm not going to take it away, but I'm going to be there with you. Some of you have physical pain you endure every day of your life. What's your prayer? I know what it is. God, take this away. He may not do it. He can. Certainly he can. But you know what he's going to do? Get in there with you. He's going to get in there with you.